Welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. Hope you guys are all having a phenomenal Wednesday, October 19th. As yesterday, we did a live show during the Guardians-Yankees game for the first couple of innings. The Yankees end up winning that series to move on to the ALCS. But on today's episode of Locked On Pirates, I found a very interesting question in the YouTube comments about who I believe are the bobblehead worthy players for the 2023 MLB season for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So we'll get into that today. Also, how do the Pirates avoid disaster at the first base position as the player review series continues? And I'm going to give my thoughts about the playoffs so far and what I've seen, what I've liked, and what I haven't liked. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most. Today's episode is brought to you by Roan and Built Bar. More on them later, but let's get into today's episode, everybody.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that Pirates podcast, everybody. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. Finally getting close to being over the sickness that I have going on, which I can show you guys why, because that is the weather if it will go into Savannah today. So we're getting a little bit of the Pittsburgh feeling. As in Pittsburgh, it's 39. So it basically feels like I'm in Pittsburgh today. The weather has been changing frantically, which has also caused me to be a little under the weather, but I am back in full swing here for off-season talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I received an interesting question via YouTube comments the other day. I'm going to scroll to it so I can actually get the exact verbiage of said question. It was from Tom Lohr. He said, mailbag question for next week. Which current Pirates player is bobblehead worthy in 2023? FYI, Brian Reynolds was bobble-sized this season, which he was. This is a very fun question. Mailbag Wednesday has kind of turned into me picking a really good question that I like and focusing on it. The questions, of course, with the Pirates not playing have kind of dimmed down a little bit, which I understand. But I do like that some of you guys are still submitting questions for Mailbag Wednesday. I do appreciate it. They are always very fun questions, including this one. And I think Brian Reynolds will probably get another one in 2023 if he is indeed here. Of course, I wouldn't see any reason why he wouldn't be, as they've already bought out his arbitration years. But if you check out the episode from last week, which happened to be my last episode before I got sick, I did talk about the one big question surrounding Brian Reynolds, whether they should fully extend him or trade him now while his value will be at its highest. But I would assume that Brian Reynolds, 95% will probably be on this team next year. I would assume that he will also probably have a bobblehead night in there somewhere. This all also depends on how the Pirates want to market this team next year. There's a lot of marketable players on this team. You could start with O'Neal Cruz. O'Neal Cruz, no doubt, should have a bobblehead next year, and I think it would also be hilarious to make the bobblehead a little bit bigger than usual, just because he's 6'7". But bobbleheads are a big, big part of baseball fanism, and I mean, I'll pull one off of my desk here as we're going a little bit. I mean, I have this one from the first ever Pirates game that I attended in person. This was their military appreciation night where Garrett Cole was pitching, so they gave one to Garrett Cole. I want to have a slew of bobbleheads. I really do. I want to have tons of current Pirates players. I mean, because you could find bobbleheads of old Pirates players all the time, like they do Steve Blass all the time, Willie Stargell, Roberto Clemente. They do a lot of different veteran guys. But as far as this team goes in terms of guys you could do now, the one that I was very surprised not to see this year at all, especially after signing his 8-year extension at the beginning of the year, was Ke'Bryan Hayes. I was very interested to see why they didn't at least pull the trigger on something like that, because of the fact that the guy is going to be here for a very long time. So get the bobbleheads crunking out now. Why not? Go ahead and throw him out there. Go ahead and make it a big make him a star in Pittsburgh. Even if myself or people who cover the team or fans don't want to make him a star, make him feel like one. Give away replica Ke'Bryan Hayes jerseys and bobbleheads and all this other stuff. And that's going to get people to come to the ballpark as well. Because, I mean, you saw at some point this year where fans were just fed up with this team. There were not a lot of promotions that we haven't seen in the past. I mean, we've seen the same promotions with the Pittsburgh Pirates since they've been in PNC Park since 2001 that are still being used today. And you still have the pierogi race as well, which is always going to be there. But at some point, let's start doing some stuff centered around these guys. I mean, you have Brian Reynolds, Key Brian Hayes, O'Neill Cruz. I'd even go as far as say David Bednar deserves a bobblehead next year. He's a local product who happens to be one of the top closers in baseball when he is healthy. Give him one. Why not give one to Rowanzi? Why not give one to Mitch Keller? Give one to Rodolfo Castro. There's plenty of guys on this team I think that are warranted to get such bobbleheads like this. And I think it would be awesome for me, especially hosting this podcast going into next year, to talk about this kind of stuff where the team needs to start marketing towards the players. If you watched Pirates games this year, you noticed that a lot of the marketing was centered around come to the ballpark, pay $30, you could go to 5 games in a given month. Cool. Market who I'm coming to see. That's more of what I'm asking for. Market who I'm coming to see play. Because, again, as I just mentioned, all those names, Keller, Contreras, Reynolds, Cruz, Castro, Hayes, they have guys that are marketable players. And at the end of the day, none of those guys are superstars. I'm not going to say they're superstars. They're not Mike Trout. They're not Aaron Judge. They're not Julio Rodriguez level. But they are good, very good Major League Baseball players that we are going to be watching as Pirates fans for probably at least the next half decade, I would say, before other players come up. And then I can't say that it warrants it yet, but we are going to probably be getting a lot of another slew of younger prospects next year, like Henry Davis, Eddie Rodriguez, Quinn Priester, Matt Frazier, Connor Scott. Those guys might get to that level, but of course we don't ever know with prospects. We really just don't ever know. And it's a scary thought, but it's something that I think the Pirates need to look forward to because I think, one, it would bring fans to the ballpark. Two, you would also be showing these players, hey, we believe in you. We think you're going to be here for quite some time. We think that you have a spot as a future piece of what this team will be when it is a contending and very good team. They haven't done that yet with really anybody except Key Brian Hayes because of the extension. That doesn't do anything for the fans, though. That's awesome that he got extended. I was very happy when he got extended. But fans want something physical to hold on to. I already have my Key Brian Hayes jersey. Probably going to get an O'Neill Cruz jersey before the season starts next year. But give the fans ample opportunity to go to the ballpark, market these guys with bobbleheads, T-shirts, whatever, and make it fun to go. Even if the team is not good in the win-loss column, I do think this team going into 2023 has a very, very, very good chance to be a fun baseball team moving into next season. Market the team as a fun baseball team. Market the team as a team that you want to come see play at PNC Park, which also just so happens to be a top 5 ballpark in all of baseball that only continues to get better with the recent renovations they made this past year. The Pirates have the pieces to market this team. They just have to market them. So I think the bobblehead worthy players as of this moment, Brian Reynolds, because he got it last year, Key Brian Hayes, O'Neill Cruz, Rodolfo Castro, David Bednar, Mitch Keller, and Rowanzi. That's who I'll throw out there. We'll see if the Pirates decide to do something like that. I don't know if they've already released their promotional schedule for next year, but I'm sure that is something they probably do closer to the year. But whenever it comes around, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this and talk about it and reference what I just talked about here. But as I just mentioned, if the Pirates do want to be a fun team in 2023, there is a certain position that they need to focus on in the offseason and making it better to avoid disaster like the disaster we saw at the catcher position this year. They need to focus on first base and make sure that it does not turn into the same disaster. I'm going to talk about that here in just a moment, but I also want to let you guys know about the wonderful people over at Roan. Of course, the dress shirt was due for a radical invention from Roan, and Roan stepped up to the challenge. Roan's commuter shirt is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man. And here's why. Mobility is everything. Roan's comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way. from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. Looking good is easy. It's time to feel confident with a wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. With Roan's wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. Odor-free tech. With Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Roan is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner altogether. Of course, I have had a Roan shirt before. I wore it to a job interview. I got the job. So it has its results wherever you're looking for in the results with Roan. The commuter shirt can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/locked on and use the promo code locked on to save 20% off of your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to rhone.com/locked on and use code locked on. It's time to find your corner office comfort and upgrade your closet with Roan and use locked on to save 20% off at eight. I almost said the whole thing. Roan.com/locked on. So the Pittsburgh Pirates have yet another offseason where there is a position of need that has a glaring issue. That would be the first base position. We saw first base mainly be occupied by Yoshi Tsutsugo for a large part of this year, which was obviously a mistake. Then you move forward and you see that Michael Chavis ended up being the guy there. And if you listen to the live show yesterday, you could see that me and one of the guests, Connor Williams, kind of talked about Michael Chavis being a competent player, but a player who also was not getting on base enough and was mainly liked because of his energy. I still liked him all around. I thought he was an awesome guy, but Michael Chavis was also never going to be the first baseman of the future of this team. I'm here to tell you right now, based off of the way that this roster is constructed, I'm not seeing the future first baseman of this team on this roster at all, at least not yet. Malcolm Nunez, who was picked up in the Jose Quintana trade, I think he's going to be a guy that they could slot over there at first base when he is ready. We will see when he's ready. I would assume probably mid-season 2023. You also still have Mason Martin in the fold, a guy that is a huge power bat but has a strikeout issue that he still needs to work out. There's not a lot to like in terms of putting all of your faith in Malcolm Nunez and Mason Martin. As far as the roster is concerned right now, it appears that Ben Gamel might make the switch over there because the outfield is going to be flooded with talent in terms of Sawinski, Reynolds, Smith and Jigba, Cal Mitchell, maybe even Tucupita Marcano at points. The outfield's going to be flooded, so Gamel's going to need to be somewhere. And Gamel, I don't think, is a fix over there either. So this is where I think the Pirates do need to go out and look at guys in free agency. Now, you're going to see my face covered here on YouTube, and for the people on audio, I will read out every free agent that is a free agent at first base because it's not a big list. Brandon Belt, Eric Hosmer, Jose Abreu, Anthony Rizzo, Miguel Sano, Josh Bell, Carlos Santana, Trey Mancini, Yuli Gurriel, Greg Bird, Jesus Aguilar, Mike Ford, and Tomas Tellis. Not a very big group. Of those guys, the Greens are player options, I believe. So Eric Hosmer and Anthony Rizzo both have player options that they will more than likely opt into. Miguel Sano, I believe, has a club option at $14.5 million, and Trey Mancini has a mutual option in Houston at $10 million. The AAVs for these guys, Abreu's around 9, Rizzo's around 23, Bell is around 18, Santana's around 10. Mancini and Gurriel are around 18 and 15. The other market values are not listed. Very small first base free agent class. I think that's evidently clear. And some of these guys are definitely, I would say, out of the Pirates' range of what they would want to spend. Brandon Belt, $16 million, maybe. Hosmer, I think, is a guy that could potentially be available if he opts into his player option and the Red Sox decide to move on. Abreu at $9 million, I could see it. He's a right-handed power bat, but did not have that great of a year in Chicago. Anthony Rizzo's a hard no. Miguel Sano, maybe, but I would also assume that Sano stays in Minnesota. Josh Bell is the one that I've seen a lot of people say they want him to return to Pittsburgh. I don't know if that would happen on an annual market value of $18.4 million. But we'll also see what happens there. But I think with the Padres run that they're currently on, I would expect Josh Bell to definitely stay in San Diego, especially with Tatis returning. I think he will stay in San Diego. Carlos Santana being a switch hitting power bat from Seattle, I don't think he would want to come to Pittsburgh at the age of 36. Trey Mancini is the one that I'm interested in watching, though. I would love Trey Mancini on this team. I think he did a phenomenal job in Baltimore. Not so sure how he's doing in Houston. I haven't kept up with him too much, but he's only about to be 31 next year. Not too old of a guy. He feels younger than that age. He's also at 18 million market value. Him and Bell are around the same age. So that makes sense. It would just be more of what do you want from either side, Bell being a switch hitter, Mancini being a pure right-handed hitter. Yuli Gurriel, 15 million AAV for a 38-year-old. I don't think that's something the Pirates interest themselves in. And then you get into Greg Bird, Jesus Aguilar, and Mike Ford. Jesus Aguilar, I think, is a guy the Pirates could definitely go after, but it's also a guy that I don't think Pirates fans would be very happy with. And he would be the more cheap option, to put it nicely. But also, I think Jesus Aguilar would definitely be a better option than what they currently have on the roster, which is sad, but I do think that's something that the Pirates should be looking at. Now, when looking at this list, there's stuff to like, obviously, but a lot of these guys are pretty unattainable, if I would say. Now, in terms of the Pirates, there's a certain guy that I've kept my eye on that me and Gary Morgan off air one time talked about as a potential guy the Pirates could look at to shore up this first base spot, and that was CJ Cron, who is, I believe, still under contract in Colorado for quite a while. But with the Rockies right now being in the state that they are, Cron being a 32-year-old who had a pretty solid year, you look at his contract. He's on a 2-year, $14.5 million guaranteed contract, so that's an AAV of about 7.3 a year. And he's under contract until next season. So he's under contract through 2023, and then 2024, he's an unrestricted free agent. The Pirates trading for Cron, I don't think would be something that's out of the cards here, especially because who knows what the Rockies want to do with him. And yes, it might be a scary thought of the fact that CJ Cron being in Colorado, being where he's been, Colorado is a hitter-friendly park. How does that translate over to PNC Park if he was to come over here? Now, what would we trade for him is definitely very interesting. You look at the trade machine, the trade simulator, baseball trade values, which is what everybody uses. And I'm going to go ahead and try to pull this up real quick. The Rockies, I believe Cron is probably their highest guy here via their median estimated trade value. And actually, he only has a 0. So if we use that metric, I don't think it would be too hard to trade for him. And I could see the Pirates possibly, throwing Travis Swaggerty out there. And it's a possibility that they do. But also, maybe the Pirates stand pat here, and maybe they like what they like with Malcolm Nunez. But I do genuinely think they have to make a move somehow with this team at first base to avoid disaster at that position. You cannot go into this season with Ben Gamel as your everyday first baseman. I like Ben Gamel. He's given us a very good track record here in Pittsburgh since he's been here, but he's a guy that you can't trust to only run that position. Now, of course, he's going to have the whole offseason to figure the position out, but he's a guy that you really have to make sure that you're paying attention to when it comes to that. I think the Pirates will do something. If it is Jesus Aguilar-esque, I'm fine with that, but we will just have to wait and see. But the Pirates do need to do something at the first base position to avoid disaster at that position before they end up in another spot like they did with the catcher position this year where it just doesn't get better. Today's episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough. Covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and your family. It will be the perfect treat. Or you could find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself. Like all Built Bars, the cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or you just need to grab a quick bite, Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar, and grab yourself a Built bar. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off of your order when you use promo code LOCKEDON15 at BuiltBar.com. So, of course, yesterday afternoon, last night, whatever you want to consider it, I was live during the first couple innings of Guardians versus Yankees. I found a little tidbit of that where I said that it felt like a Giancarlo Stanton home run moment, and he hits a 3-run home run. Thought that was pretty hilarious. With that said, we get Yankees Astros for the third time in 6 years in the ALCS. The Phillies defeated the Padres last night in the NLCS 2-0 in a one hitter in San Diego. Two very different league championship series this year. On one end, you have the Yankees and the Astros, who've pretty much been the pillars of the American League for the last 6 or 7 years or so. On the other side, in the NLCS, you have two teams that basically said, we're going to go for it. We're going to buy what we need to buy. We're going to trade for what we need to trade for. We're going to make sure that this thing happens. My thoughts on the playoffs thus far have been pretty much that in baseball, anything can happen at any given time. And obviously that reigns true when the bottom two wildcard teams in the National League are playing each other in the National League Championship Series. Very, very interesting, obviously. But on one end of the coin as well, you look at the American League again, and you have yet another thing going on with the Yankees and the Astros. For me personally, especially as a Pirates fan, I more or less could care less about the American League Series. I love baseball, so I'm still going to watch it, and it starts tonight, which I think is highly unfair to the New York Yankees or the Cleveland Guardians, whoever won that game. I'm not saying that just because of the Astros. I'm just saying either way, I think it was highly unfair to whoever won Game 5 that this game is being played today. But I personally will probably be rooting for the team that wins Padres-Phillies. Yes, I know, rooting for a Philly team. That'll probably get me chastised on this podcast for quite a while. But at the end of the day, when you look at the Pirates, especially when you look at this postseason, there's hope for this team down the road because now with the new implementation of an extra wildcard team, the Pirates would have made the playoffs in 2018 if the extra wildcard team was a thing at 83-79. Yes, it's probably an anomaly this year. I'm not expecting the 5 and 6 seed to make the NLCS every single year that this happens, but it does open the door for teams like Seattle, like Philly, like San Diego, who we haven't seen in the playoffs in quite some time, to get there. And when they do get there, they start making a run. And it's crazy that one of the Padres or the Phillies are guaranteed to be in the World Series. And I think that series is going 7 games. Both of those teams are very, very close to each other in terms of the talent levels. My main thoughts on it, Houston, I think, will probably get the better of New York again. I just think they have the better all-complete roster. And of all four teams left, I definitely think Houston has the better all-complete roster, period. So we'll see how it pans out. I'm not going to give predictions here. I just don't feel the need this time. I mean, my prediction at first was it was Toronto and New York, the Mets. Obviously, both of those teams not there anymore. I jokingly said Seattle and Philly. One of those two appears to be really good. So my March Madness bracket would be very nice. But with that said, I mean, the playoffs have been fun. I think they're only going to continue to be fun. Hopefully, the Pirates get back to them soon enough. With that said, guys, my name is Ethan Smith of the Locked On Pirates podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today on Wednesday, October 19th. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully, you will enjoy tomorrow's episode, which will be talking a little bit about the middle infield construction for 2023 and what they decided to do with Kevin Newman and Rodolfo Castro, Tucupita Marcano, Diego Castillo, etc. We're going to get all about that tomorrow. Make sure you go check out Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, but we call him Sully here. He will be covering everything you need to know about the MLB playoffs for the next couple weeks with the NL and ALCS wrapping up, as well as the World Series going into November. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. See you on the flip side, and have a great rest of your day.